Well, we have to talk about The Voice.
Of course.
Noel Pearson was just on this network being interviewed, and I, for one, was more disturbed by what he had to say. He was supposed to be reassuring us about The Voice, but I found it actually more disturbing. According to Noel Pearson, The Voice will involve all sorts of deal-making at all sorts of levels. According to him, even the local football field, the oval that someone wants to build, will have to be negotiated with bureaucrats from The Voice. Across the nation, at a grassroots level, we're going to have thousands of these voice busybodies wandering around. Every time anybody wants to do something, they'll be involved. A, who's going to pay for all this stuff? B, this means that, who's going to send these bureaucrats to all these remote parts of the... You're going to pay for it. And what about, it's bad enough, the red tape and green tape in this country, but suddenly we're going to have this massive new Aboriginal heritage thing on top of every single decision. This is what Noel Pearson is saying in a reassuring way, Rita.
Well, I just wonder how many children in remote communities are going to be helped by this extra bureaucracy, all this red tape.
Precisely.
How many women who are grossly overrepresented when it comes to issues like domestic violence, more than 30 times more likely to be hospitalised, Indigenous women than non-Indigenous women in this country from domestic violence. How many of those is this going to help? I mean, what he's saying there, I applauded, because at least there's a measure of honesty here. So much of what we've heard about The Voice is dishonest, presented as something that's just symbolic, a goodwill gesture, just recognition. It is not that. It is a lot more, and it's only the first step, because as we know from the Uluru Statement, treaty is the end game.
Absolutely, and treaty means ceding sovereignty, James.
It's important here, guys, not to get so focused on The Voice that we don't miss all of the other things that are already happening. Now, one of the things that Noel said in his interview with Andrew Clennell was that he was asked, what about broad issues that also affect Indigenous Australians? And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. The Voice will have a say on that sort of thing. But he also talked about the Juukan Gorge case, where there were those archaeological artifacts that were blown up in the course of some mining thing or something like that. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about that is that he said this would have prevented that. But you look at what's happening already even before The Voice, and you see how there was that case in WA where somebody wanted to put a series of weirs along a river on a cattle property.
Oh, that was out in Friend Twiggy.
Yes,
Twiggy Forest. And this was stopped because there was a belief that there was a river serpent that traveled, up and down this, not a real one, but just a spiritual serpent. And the question here, to me, is because there are, all sorts of native species and so on in this country. But the point being that the same left that will denigrate Christian traditions at every step of the way is absolutely eager to use Indigenous spiritual traditions to stop development and to throw a spanner into all sorts of development across this country. And it won't just be far, but it'll be everywhere.
We'll talk about it as well later on. WA in Western Australia, the new cultural heritage laws are basically going to impose a massive bureaucracy over decision-making at the grassroots level, which is the last place you want it.